Yeah, good.
Excellent. Hopefully it's going to make it. Okay. So as you look at the sheet, I called it "Oh Joy," and I want to talk a little bit about the the mitzvah of simcha, of joy, happiness on holidays, and especially on Sukkot, because we call Sukkot in the Tefillah Chag Sukkot, Zman Simchatenu, the time of our joy. So I want to talk about what is the joy. But just before I do that, I want to take a look at the second comment on the page, which is Rabbeinu Bechaye. And Rabbeinu Bechaye um, is trying to do something which I think is nice to do before the Chagim, realizing that the three Chagim, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, are really one unity. And he does it. He says it's Kabbalistic, but I think it's very homiletic. I think it's very beautiful. So he says a Kabbalistic approach. Okay, the three festivals listed correspond to the three patriarchs. Okay, who represent the three famous attributes of personality development. Chesed is Avraham, Din or Gvura, sometimes judgment or strength, power is Yitzchak. Rachamim slash Tiferet. Rachamim is compassion, and Tiferet is this synthesis which we believe brings to splendor. So those are the three avot. So Pesach symbolizes that God practiced judgment on the Egyptians, whereas at the same time, he extended kindness by passing over the Jewish people. And then Onkelos says something interesting. Onkelos is the Aramaic translation that is considered to be authoritative, translates the word upasach as v'yachos chas. That's chesed, that he displayed loving kindness. Whereas, so the word Pesach itself, which we normally translate as to jump over or pass over, may really mean to show great kindness and love. Whereas the plague was just it was a great act of kindness for the Jews. Shavuot corresponds to mercy, an attribute which usually reconciles the opposing demands of the attributes of chesed and justice, respectively. That is why the sages in Brachot consider the term tiferet. Okay, the word sukkah is interpreted in Megillah to mean Holy Spirit and has to do with justice. So Avram was told by God to submit to the dictates of Sarah, known already as Yiska. So in other words, Sarah is her secondary name really is related to Sukkah. By the way, Yiska gives us I actually have two granddaughters named Yiska. In English, Yiska is Jessica. Yiska. But it comes from the word that makes it sound like Sukkot. We find that she was covered like a sukkah with Holy Spirit. That wherever she went, the divine spirit was with her. We find that bayit, a house, a home, is an allusion to chachma. Already in the first letter bet in the Torah begins with the letter bet. What's significant about the shape of that letter? So sukkah is known as bayit, bet. In other words, sukkah symbolizes chachma and symbolizes bayit. Solomon reinforces the concept in Proverbs, a house is built by wisdom. The symbolism extended by our author to include the three walls which the sukkah has to have. So in other words, when you have a three-walled building or hut or structure, it looks like a bet. The bet has three sides to it. So the bet, which represents wisdom, is also the three sides of the sukkah. So in other words, we're saying that somehow all of the human attributes are represented by the three holidays and the three patriarchs, and they form a unity. So whenever we're celebrating Sukkot, we're also thinking about Shavuot, the giving of the Torah, Pesach, the Exodus from Egypt. They all combine, they're all part of the same message, which ultimately is that you, God, chose us from all the other nations. The three holidays, the Exodus from Egypt, the giving of the Torah, and the miracles in the desert showed that God chose us. And that's what the holidays do. And together they form this unity. Okay. Now we want to talk for the next half an hour or so about joy. And before I get to the different kinds of joy that are significant on Sukkot, the time of our joyfulness, of our celebration, of our happiness. I want to play a 4-minute clip from one of the most famous, if not the most famous, orchestral piece ever written. I was one great piece of trivia when Sony, about 30 years ago, 35 years ago, was trying to figure out how long to make this new technology called CD, compact disc. And they said, so the original idea was make it an hour. And after much debate, and actually they got in touch with the Philips Corporation in Europe because they were going to do it together, they decided that the length of the CD, the compact disc, should be long enough to contain Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. And therefore it had to be 74 minutes long. So the reason that we have CD, we don't use them anymore. Now we've got thumb drives and everything. But for 20 years or so, we were using CDs, and they were 74 minutes long because that's how long it takes to play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. So what I want to do now is actually share 4 minutes from the fourth movement. And unless your German is excellent, you won't understand it, but I'll tell you what it means in English in about 4 minutes, give or take. I I actually get goosebumps whenever I hear the when the choir just jumps in toward the end. The word in the original German, which you if you heard one word over and over again, it's Freude. And the word Freude in German means joy. And the poem that Beethoven used in the fourth movement of the Ninth Symphony was a long poem that we're going to take a look at just a little piece of in just a minute, that was written by Friedrich Schiller, called Ode to Joy. And he wrote it in 1785. And the symphony was written approximately 40 years later. Um, and it's just a famous poem about joy. Now, I'm going to try to put up a little bit of the poem here. And okay, I have to do share screen again. Okay, hopefully I'm going to get this right. Chrome tab, files, and share. And here it is. So, as I said, Ode to Joy by Friedrich Schiller, and joy, a spark of fire from heaven. He doesn't use the word heaven, he uses Elysium, Elysian fields from Greek mythology. If you've mastered that great challenge. And now he lists 4 things that give us joy. The first is giving friendship to a friend. 2, if you've earned a steadfast woman, well, I mean, spouse. I mean, he's a man, so he's writing, about his wife, but it means if you've got a loyal and loving spouse, celebrate your joy with us. All creation drinks with pleasure, and now he brings. Now he brings 2 more things. Drinks at Mother Nature's breast, way above the stars, brothers. There's that A doesn't belong there. Oh, typo. There must live the loving Father. So 4 things: friendship, good marriage, enjoying nature, and the sense of a loving Father in heaven. Stop sharing. Okay, so now let's take a look at some commentaries who talk about the mitzvah of joy on Chag. And I want to start with the Tzena Rena. Now, the Tzena Rena really is not an original source. Tzena Rena was a book it's actually written in Yiddish for women. And it says, Tzena Rena Benot Yerushalayim, that go out and enjoy yourself, O daughters of Jerusalem. It's a quote from Song of Songs. And this was a book written in Yiddish so that women who weren't able to learn original sources in Hebrew or Aramaic could understand. So I just took it from there because I found it there. So the Torah wrote joy with regards to Shavuot and Sukkot, since the grain is ready in Israel. Then he can feed the poor and make them rejoice. Aha, we've already got 2 of the things on the sheet. One is enjoying nature. Drink from Mother Nature's breast, that is bringing in the harvest and sharing it with those who are less fortunate. That's making friends and being a kind individual. So the joy we start off with right away on the Chag are very, are very closely tied to a couple of the ideas in Schiller. If you go further down the page to the Likutei Maharan, now Likutei Maharan, of course, is Rabbi Nachman. And he starts off with a good sweat brings to joy. Now, I'm not sure what he means by a good sweat. I don't, sometimes I've been in shul on Simchas Torah and it's pretty sweaty, and it's not always that pleasant with all the yeshiva guys, dancing crazily and dripping sweat. But he is talking real about work. As in, you shall rejoice in your festivals, nor is this necessarily referring to an actual Yom Tov. Ooh, Rabbi Nachman says you don't have to reserve joy for Chag, but any Yom that is good is a Yom Tov. Remember, okay, well, we'll get to his famous line in a minute. This answers the question about what Rabbi Eliezer said. I praise those who are lazy on the holiday, on the festival, as in you shall rejoice. But did not Rabbi Yitzchak also say, you can't be too lazy? Why can't you be lazy? A man is obliged to visit his rabbi, his Rebbe, which for the Hasidim, of course, meant the Rebbe, their tzaddik, on Chag. And this comes from a story in Kings about, why are you going? And the idea is that you're supposed to, now the joy of all mitzvot, they gather in the heart of the Chagim. That's why they're days of joy. In those days, they didn't visit the Rebbe, they visited the Kohen, they visited Yerushalayim, they visited God in Yerushalayim. Then the face radiates because of the joy, as in a joyous heart makes a good countenance. Because of this, we were commanded 3 times a year, all your males shall appear before the countenance of God to receive or panav, the light of the divine presence. Eminent physicians also have spoken at length about this, that all illness is the product of gloom and depression, and joy is a great healer. Well, those of us who remember growing up reading Reader's Digest, and one of the sections, laughter is the best medicine. And there's truth to this. I wouldn't, I'm not going to say it's going to replace, antibiotics, but a good attitude goes a long way to helping us when sick. In the future, all sickness will be remedied through joy. The rule is that a person has to be very determined and to put all of his strength into being nothing but happy all times, at all times. Simcha gedol, mitzvah gedola liya b'simcha tamid. That's famous quote from Rabbi Nachman. We're supposed to always be happy. Yom Tov is supposed to teach us about happiness. And happiness includes a spiritual visit to either, when there's the temple of Yerushalayim, if there's no temple, then to your Rebbe. The Pri Tzaddik, talking about joy, as Chag is always a term of joy. That is why the sages, Chazal, Chag always refers to Sukkot. Now, in the Gemara, they were nicknames for the holidays. So Pesach is called Pesach. The Torah calls it Chag HaMatzot, but the rabbis called it Pesach. Shavuot in the Gemara is called Atzeret, which means a gathering, and Sukkot in the Gemara is called Chag. So the preeminent, the epitome of Chag is Sukkot, since it is a time of joy. And as like it is said, Chogu Chagat, which Rashi explains to increase joy on Sukkot. And that which Tosfos said, that some say the term of Chag comes from a chug, which means a circle. They used to dance in a circle. They reeled and moved about like a drunkard. Okay, and the famous dancing was done in Simchat Beit HaShoeva, when they used to bring the water for the temple libations from the Gihon spring on Sukkot, and they were singing and dancing in circles. And even about Sukkot, which is the time of our joy, and on which the commandment of joy is explicit, is written, and you shall rejoice in your holiday. Hence, it embodies the joy of Israel, the commemoration of and includes a commemoration, Zeichel Yitzim Mitzrayim, a remembrance of that. Okay, so we're supposed to dance and sing. Okay, not specifically mentioned by Schiller, but still part of joy. The Yismach Moshe, who is a Hasidic Rebbe, and his name was Moshe Teitelbaum, not Satmar. It was before Satmar. There were Teitelbaums before Satmar. And he was a student of the Maggid of Mezrich. It is explained in the Reshit Chachma that one who desires to bring joy to the soul should seclude themselves for part of the day and contemplate the greatness of the letters of the 4-letter name of God. Shiviti Hashem lenegdi tamid, Shiviti Yud Kei Vav Kei. And we're supposed to just contemplate the presence of God in the universe. And that is supposed to bring us joy. And that is number 4 in the poem of the poem of Schiller. There must live the loving Father, that you must be this closeness to your loving Father in heaven, God. So that's what he's saying, that the joy comes from contemplating the name of God. Go to the one below that, Rav Binyamin Zimmerman. One of the most important facets of religious existence is simcha. Okay, we will. Rabbi Zimmerman, by the way, wrote this on the website for Yeshivat Har Etzion. Okay, we will translate this as joy, although its true meaning is much deeper. So Chag means to dance in a circle. Simcha means to be joyous, but it means something deeper than joy. Okay, let's leave that in abeyance for a couple of minutes. We'll come back. Okay. Da, 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 da. Well, I mean, we saw already that joy comes from feeling close to God, dancing in a circle, singing, enjoying nature, sharing your wealth with others. So we've seen a number of things that simcha is more than just, laughing and having a good time, that there are deep issues that we're supposed to contemplate as part of our joy. But okay, while we must understand why simcha is so necessary, another question must be asked. How does simcha relate to the impersonal realm? Is joy in spiritual endeavors each individual's unique responsibility? Now, I understand joy. I have a party and I have a couple of friends over, and we share a beer and watch a ball game. I mean, I'm talking about guys, okay, or whatever it might be. And so normally, right away, we think of joy. We think of camaraderie, which is beautiful. But is there something else? Is that all there is? Or does the Stoic expect one to seek the joy of others as well? Maybe it's not enough that I'm happy. Maybe joy requires me to make others happy. However, the novelty of the Torah's requirement of simcha is that bringing joy to others is not only for the purposes of creating an atmosphere of joy. Clearly, laughter is contagious. One's personal simcha is judged by the level of one's bringing joy to others. And again, that is back to Schiller, which is his first, giving friendship to a friend. And I think that it's just a beautiful form of friendship that sometimes a friend comes over and you don't do what you want to do. You do what he wants to do or she wants to do, because you just want to make them feel good. And there's no greater joy than that kind of empathy and concern and love for others. Okay. One's personal simcha is judged by the level of one's bringing joy to others. Gladdening others is the yardstick for achieving simcha, which the Torah encourages us to achieve. Beautiful idea. And like I said, in the four-part list of Schiller in his Ode to Joy, but definitely part of Judaism. Remember, you should love your fellow or your colleague, your fellow, your friend, as you love yourself, is Zer Klal Gadol b'Torah, Rabbi Akiva says. So this idea of joy is to make it contagious. It's to share it. It's to spread it. Very powerful and important idea. The Rambam. The simcha with which a person should rejoice in the fulfillment of the mitzvot and the love of God, who commanded them, is a great service, a great mitzvah. Being happy and joyous is a tremendous fulfillment of what Torah wants from us. Whoever holds himself back from this rejoicing is worthy of retribution. You deserve a punishment. You don't have a good time. You don't have a good time on Yom Tov? whip that guy. I mean, really, you're supposed to enjoy yourself. For you did not serve the Lord your God amidst happiness and goodness of the heart. Whoever holds himself proud, giving himself honor, and acting haughtily, and that means reserving and pulling away from others in such situations, is a sinner and a fool. And I actually made a mistake. I forgot to put in. The Rambam continues to talk about what things that you do for joy, and he specifies buying clothes for your wife. That the Rambam really felt that one of the major ways of fulfilling the mitzvah of joy is making sure that your spouse is happy. And he mentions it in terms. He felt. I mean, the Rambam writing in the 12th century was a bit of a male chauvinist. He felt like his audience was men. Women didn't have access to Svarim and to Hebrew language, living there in Egypt. So he felt that it was very important that the people reading his book, which were men, should indeed, make sure that their wives are happy. And that, of course, is number 2 on Schiller's list. If you've earned a steadfast woman. I don't know exactly if that's a good translation from the German, but I just took it offline as this translation. It's very important to have, a spouse that stands by you. According to the Rambam, having a spouse that stands by you means that the woman cooks beautiful meals. The man buys clothing and takshitim. What's the English? Jewelry for his wife. So we've gotten to all 4 of the things in Schiller's list. Just to review: friendship, a good marriage, enjoying nature and nature's beauty and bounty, and a sense of closeness to our Father in heaven. So those 4 items that are the ode to joy in the 4th movement of Beethoven's 9th Symphony, definitely a part of our concept of joy and simcha on holidays. Okay, before we change the topic, 2 more minutes. The Mesilat Yeshurim. Our sages have said, Shechina only comes to one amidst simcha shel mitzvah. If you really want to feel divine presence, it should be approachable. Shechina, divine presence, should be available to someone only when they have this sense of simcha shel mitzvah, a joy from fulfilling God's commandments. On the verse, Ivdu et Hashem b'simcha, which is a verse in Serve God with Happiness, which is a verse from Tehillim, Rabbi Abu said, when you pray, let your heart rejoice that you are before a God without parallel. When you daven, it should be with a sense of something special, happy, joyous, moving is happening on. This is true happiness, that one is privileged to serve God, who has no equal, and to do his Torah and mitzvot. Shlomo HaMelech said in Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs, which is really a song of love, the king has brought me to his chambers. We will rejoice and be happy in you. The further a person enters into the chambers of the knowledge of the greatness of God, the greater is his happiness, and his heart rejoices within him. Okay, all of this is beautiful. And I just want to mention, I definitely feel this when I daven outside. I have a joy in my davening when I daven outside that I don't have when I'm inside. Number one, when I'm outside, I daven out loud, and when you're in shul, you can't do that. I mean, you can, a little bit, but you have to be careful. You don't want to, God forbid, disturb anybody else's tefillah. So that's number one. I can daven out loud, which makes me happy, and I daven better. But there's something about being outside in nature, and next is pretty tree, and you can sometimes hear the birds, and you can see flowers. And it's just one until you hear the construction work going on, because they're ruining Derech Hebron to put in the light rail. But unless the construction noise overcomes you, it's really wonderful. It's really wonderful. But maybe you've been waiting for the second shoe to drop. But there is a custom on Sukkot to read Kohelet. Kohelet is a very sobering book. First of all, it's the longest of the Megillot. It's 12 chapters. The second longest is Megillat Esther with 10. But first of all, it's long, and it's actually very depressing. And Rav Yaakov Meidan, who's again Rosh Hashiva at Yeshivat Har Etzion, writing about this, and he says one major reason mentioned by the poskim for reading this very depressing book, everything is hevel, everything is meaningless, everything is everybody dies. I mean, it's just really depressing. One major reason mentioned by the poskim, by the halachic authorities, for reading Kohelet on Sukkot is the fact that the festival of Sukkot is the time of our rejoicing. Really? That's the reason? I don't find reading Kohelet very happy. But Kohelet asks, and of happiness, what does it accomplish? This implies that despite the fact that the festival of Sukkot is a time of rejoicing, one must avoid boundless rejoicing. Mentioning the verse in Kohelet is intended to limit the joy of the festival. In other words, there should be joy, but there should be a certain level of sobriety. There are additional reasons to be concerned about the smugness resulting from the amassing of property, and Kohelet deals with them as well. In other words, some people on Sukkot might be happy because of the accumulation of the harvest, that people felt the most wealthy on Sukkot. So his point is, we have to just, yes, be very happy, but make sure that the happiness isn't based upon how full my silo is. The happiness has to be based on the 4 criteria we've been talking about, both in Schiller's poem and in these commentaries. That you should be happy with nature's bounty, but you shouldn't find that your wealth is directly based. Your joy is directly based upon wealth and accumulation of things. Later in the book, Kohelet will explicitly say that a person does not determine the day of his death, and that on the day in which he is sentenced to die, his spirit will leave him and will not be able to hold on to it with him. Just as a man wields no power over the day of his death or the length of life, so he must understand that he will not escape in his wickedness from God's judgment on the day of judgment and his death. So in other words, there are very sobering ideas. Very sobering ideas in the book of Kohelet. Now, there was an article on another website. I don't want to mention who, because I really thought that the article was foolish. But I'm going to say that Kohelet is there to add to the simcha of the holiday. It's infused with a spirit of joy and optimism and gives Sukkot a special flavor. Yeah, it does give Sukkot a special flavor, but that special flavor is wormwood and bitterness and maror. Whoever wrote this really, I feel like telling this rabbi to go back and read it again. That's like, right. It's There's something about Kohelet that's there to put the brakes or at least control the levels of happiness. Um, there's one more thing. Reb Mordechai Yaffe, who was a Polish interpreter from the 16th century, he says they were supposed to be happy. Kohelet urges people to rejoice in their portion and not run after increased wealth. And this is true. In other words, be happy with what I have, and it's the chase for more that is hevel, is vanity and meaningless. Okay, all of this is fascinating, but I want to add one more point. And actually, Rav Meidan said it first. That there is, and be happy for some other people too. Yes, that's a good point. But your happiness shouldn't be based upon just amassing wealth. I think there's something else going on. And I think it's very important for this year. Sukkot is going to be very difficult this year. I mean, Shmini Atzeret is the anniversary. I know we said October 7th, but Shmini Atzeret is the anniversary of the massacre. I have a son. I have a son in that camp in Binyamina that was attacked last night. Baruch Hashem, my son is fine. But 4 Chayalim in that same camp were killed and 60 others were injured. My son drove a friend. I mean, there were so many injuries that my son had to use his private car to drive somebody who was injured in his shoulder to the Rambam Hospital in Haifa. There weren't enough ambulances to get all of the people who were injured to the hospitals. It was just a terrible, terrible time last night. So there's a lot to not be happy about. But Kohelet, I think, is trying to tell us, yeah, you got to be happy even though there are these other factors going on. In spite of all of this sadness and all of this misery and all of these problems, nevertheless, on Chag, you are obligated to find things to be happy about. And that's what we have to do. In other words, we have to go out of our way to say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this makes me happy. I know other things are bad. And I think that a lot of things going on in the world are wrong, but I am committed, because it's Chag, to remember the historic proportions of Jewish history, which makes me happy. Our ability to survive, our ability to get past all of these difficulties, that is a reason for us to rejoice. And so, in spite of everything else, we must find things to rejoice about. I remember Simchat Torah. I was in America. I was at YU in 1973, and the war was going on, the Yom Kippur War, and we didn't know how things were going in America. We got news reports. But in those days, it wasn't like now that there were reporters that there were reporters right there in the battlefield, and you knew everything that's going on. It took a while for us to find out. And when Simchat Torah started, we didn't realize that actually Tzahal, the Israeli Defense Forces, had turned the tide, and we were pushing into Africa. We didn't know that as we went into Chag. It was difficult. And I remember one of the Rebbeim at YU, it was actually Rabbi Willig, getting up and saying, we have a chiyuv of simcha, and we hope that our simcha will be instrumental in the war taking a positive turn. And I think that was a good message to give to us young men in Yeshiva University back in 1973. And I think we go into Yom Kippur with a similar idea. And there was somebody in 2016, and he's the last person on the sheet in front of you, and his name is Rabbi Nathan Lopez Cardozo, who in the last few years has gotten a little controversial with a few liberal positions, but a very, very smart person and a very terrific thinker within Jewish issues. And he wrote this. This is part of a longer article that Rabbi Cardozo wrote in 2016, when again there was trouble in Gaza, and I think it's important for us to take a look at what he said, because a lot of it pertains to this year. Since the Sukkah teaches us about life's handicaps, the Sukkah is frail, the Sukkah is fragile, the Sukkah is where a strong wind could, God forbid, knock it over. We would expect Jewish law to require that its interior reflect a similar message. Because the outside's very flimsy and frail, shouldn't the inside too? No, the Sukkah should be empty of anything that provides comfort. Maybe, right? It should certainly contain nothing than a few broken chairs, an old table, and some meager cutlery with which to eat one's dry bread. As if the inside of the Sukkah was supposedly to be like the walls of the Sukkah, it would be miserable. I don't know if people remember. Growing up, a lot of the Sukkot in Massachusetts, at least, were like old doors that were like connected. People like took boards, and there were discarded doors. People didn't buy, prefab Sukkot. People made them. And a lot of them were made with really discarded things. So it was just fascinating, But then you get inside the Sukkah, and what does he say? Surprisingly, we find the contrary. In Jewish law, which stipulates that the Sukkah's interior must reflect an optimistic lifestyle. Its frail walls should be adorned on the inside with beautiful art, paintings, and other decorations. The leaking roof, made from leaves or reeds, should look attractive by having colorful fruits hanging from it. The message could not be any clearer. No matter how powerfully the outside walls and the leaking roof reveal our vulnerability and uncertainty, the frailty of the Sukkah is supposed to remind us of the uncertainties of life. However, inside these walls, we need to make our life as attractive as possible and enjoy its great benefits and blessings. True. And he's writing this 2016. Boy, 8 years later, he could say the exact same things. True. Iran's threats, global anti-Semitism, and the delegitimization of Israel, all these prove how vulnerable we really are and how shaken are the outer walls of our Sukkah, of our life, of our existence as Jews. But none of this should hold us back from enjoying life as much as possible. To be happy when all is well is fairly easy, but to be fully aware of the dangers surrounding us, while simultaneously continuing our lives with song and harp. In other words, with the songs and psalms of David, with sing songs of joy, with music of happiness. That is what makes humans great and proud. That is the measure of the greatness of humanity, that we can find the beauty in life in spite of the ugliness of the surrounding terrain. Indeed, the walls of our worldly Sukkah may be shaking, but let us not forget that we have an obligation to decorate its interior. Let us never forget that we have an obligation to be happy on the holiday, in spite of other things that are happening. Because we do have a lot to be thankful for. Yes, the war is going on, it's dragging, and we have so many complaints about the way it's being fought and the way our politicians don't seem to care about the right things at the right times. There's a lot to complain about, and I do it too. We all do it, and it's appropriate. But on Sukkot, we have to flip the script and look for things to be happy about. You know, we have to remember, all those missiles that Baruch Hashem, with Ezrat Hashem, with the help and support of God, we intercepted. I know it's a lot to be said when a rear missile gets through, or a drone in the case of Binyamina. Nevertheless, we've been very successful in keeping the home front safe, and we have to pray that our forces will bring a victory sooner rather than later. And we have to pray for Hashem's support in all of these things. But we have a lot to be grateful for here in our beautiful Medina, in our proto-redeemed state. And even though we can't totally put the war out of our heads, we have to say Tehillim, and we have to say the Misha Berachs, we have to bless them and pray for them. Nevertheless, we have to be happy about the successes that are going on, and our lives here in Eretz Yisrael, something that many of us just dreamed about when we were younger. So we have to find those things to be happy about. And when we're thinking about the things to be happy about, I think that we have to focus on the four. Number one, wonderful friends. Number two, wonderful marriages. Number three, the joys and beauty of nature and fruit and scenery and all of that. And perhaps the most important, the sense of a relationship with Avinu Shebashamayim, with our loving parent in heaven. That we have to keep all four of those things in mind. So even though there's a lot to worry about, a lot to pray for, and we have a long ways to go in this battle that we're in the midst of, nevertheless, it shouldn't be that hard for us to find the beauty in our lives, to thank Hashem for, and to rejoice over. It's not always easy, but sometimes when we put the effort into these harder tasks, it's even more rewarding. So I want to wish everybody a Chag Sameach, a joyous Sukkot, and we have to always stay safe and careful, but nevertheless, enjoy wonderful company, wonderful family, food, and our relationship with Hashem as well. So please have a Chag Sameach. We won't meet next week, Chol HaMoed, but we will meet 2 weeks from tonight when we start the Torah again. And we hope to have a get-together live and in person on the Monday of November 4th. And it's going to be at 12:30 in Ashkelon, venue to be determined and announced soon. But I hope many of us get together. It's just it is wonderful that we do actually. That's Monday. I gave the date for Sunday. I'm sorry. We want to do it on Monday. Monday at 12:30. That's November 4th. Okay. But Chag Sameach, and okay, have a wonderful Chag. Stay safe.
Amen.
Pray well, but find joy. Bye-bye. Oh, we said Sunday? Oh, it's Sunday. It's Sunday. We did say Sunday. You're right. Okay. Bye-bye. I'll get it right.
It's going to be Monday. Unless you want to change it.
Let's see. Let's see. Okay. Chag Sameach. Enjoy.
You too.